The film opens with our lead, Levon Cade, a homeless construction worker who sleeps in his truck. Levon works among the poor immigrants and leads a simple life. After work, he visits the owners of the construction company, Joe and Carla Garcia, who are like a family to him. He enjoys watching their daughter Jenny beg them for money to throw her friends a party. When Levon heads outside to continue his work, he spots some thugs ganging up on one of the laborers. Levon protests to stop the beating, but the thugs target him instead. He fights them back and launches fatal attacks, prompting them to flee the scene. Now in a state of shock, the victim asks Levon who he is, but Levon silently walks past him. He returns to working on the blueprints, where Jenny approaches him and confronts him about what she's just seen. He tells her to keep it quiet, but she points out that she's figured by his fighting style that he's a militant. She hands him some homemade food containers and leaves him be. After work, Levon goes to pick up his daughter, Mary, from her maternal grandfather's house because he holds her custody after the death of her mother. The old man reignites his daughter's suicide and blames Levon for driving her to that state. Levon doesn't cause a scene and takes Mary to a restaurant, where he gifts her a framed photo of her mother. Mary doesn't appreciate it since she hates her mother for giving up on them. Later that evening, Levon visits his lawyers, who suggest buying a home to win Mary's custody. The same night, Jenny throws her friends a party at a bar. Simultaneously, Levon buys a small apartment. Jenny drinks and dances with her friends until they get sick. The suspicious-looking bartender stares at Jenny and calls his associates. Jenny's friend gets sick, so Jenny accompanies her in the bathroom. That's when the bartender's associates, Viper and Artemis, arrive at the bar and abduct Jenny. They turn out to be traffickers who kidnap young girls and supply them to their high-end clientele. 2 days after the abduction, Levon finds out about Jenny's abduction from her parents. They know he's a militant, so they desperately pay him to track down Jenny, but he refuses to help them since he's out of practice. After work, he visits another former militant named Gunny, who lives in the middle of the woods. When Levon discusses Jenny's abduction with him, Gunny encourages him to find Jenny. Levon visits Jenny's parents at their house. He approaches Joe, who's currently shedding tears while watching Jenny's homemade videos. Levon promises to track down Jenny and bring her back without charging any money because he considers them his family and Jenny his daughter. He begins looking for Jenny, starting from the bar where she was last seen. He suspects the bartender after seeing him sell roofies to youngsters as a side gig. Levon waits outside the bar for him. When he closes the bar and heads home, Levon follows him and barges in his house with his gun pointed at him. He shows him Jenny's photo and inquires about her whereabouts, but the bartender confidently claims that he doesn't remember the girls' faces, as a lot of them come and go on a daily basis. Levon knows something is fishy, so he drags the bartender to the bathroom and uses a classic military torture technique on him, according to which he covers his face with a cloth and runs cold tap water over it. As the bartender struggles and nearly dies, 2 guys from the trafficking ring barge into his house. He screams to get their attention, which works out. Those traffickers open fire in the bathroom's direction, so Levon uses the bartender as his human shield on his way out. The bartender dies immediately, and so do the traffickers, whom Levon shoots. Levon deliberately steals their bag of money to attract the bad guys. On the contrary, Jenny is seen all tied up and in bad condition. The next day, Levon keeps an eye on the house from his truck and spots more men arriving there. Among them is their ringleader, Wolo Kolesnik, who's a Russian mafia head. While Levon notes down strategies in his journal, Wolo and his minions investigate the dead bartender and the trafficker's case. They conclude that they've shot each other over some argument, but Wolo is clever enough to know there was a third party involved, who also stole their money. He orders his minions to find out the man behind this offense and calls his cleaning service to get rid of the corpses. Levon follows Wolo on his way back to his house. Wolo abuses his wife, which Levon finds intolerable. He infiltrates his house and splashes hot coffee on Wolo's face. He then gives him a knockout punch. When Wolo regains consciousness, he finds himself tied to a chair, which is tethered to a rope. Levon trips the chair near the edge of the swimming pool and holds the rope. Wolo figures he's the one who stole their money. Levon quickly throws all the money in the water since he never really cares about it. When he interrogates him about Jenny, he threatens to come after him and his coming generations for messing with him. He also keeps mentioning someone named Dimi while cursing him. When he doesn't comply with Levon, Levon cuts the rope and lets him drown in the pool, due to which he dies. Levon starts looking for Demi, while Wolo is discovered by his mafia and elder brother Simon, who runs the trafficking ring. He watches the surveillance monitors and orders the minions to hunt down Levon. On the sideline, Jenny is seen being mistreated and poorly fed by a masked entity. Levon calls his pal in the DEA to ID Demi, but his pal redirects him to a bar. When Levon arrives there, Artemis monitors him through the surveillance cameras. She thinks he's a cop, so she sends his man to inquire of him first. Levon pays him handsomely in order to be taken to their owner. The owner turns out to be an entitled prick named Dutch, who sits on a throne. Dutch calls in his men to deal with Levon, which Levon doesn't appreciate. He starts beating them up, during which Dutch spots his Marine tattoo and stops his men, revealing that he was once in the Marines too. He hears Levon out and agrees to meet him privately the next day. When Levon arrives there, he faces Artemis and her man, whom he pays in exchange for a phone. When he drives away, Dutch calls him on that phone and tells him to sell the drugs he's placed under his car seat. He also offers to involve him in bigger matters, for which he must dress professionally and meet him at the bar. Levon throws the drugs in the pond and drives away. On the contrary, Artemis and Viper take Jenny to their client, whom Jenny attacks and escapes. While they hurry to get her back, Levon buys a tailored suit and visits Dutch, who introduces him to Demi. Demi sees his ID card and hands him a briefcase full of drugs to sell. Levon flushes them right away and returns to his apartment, where he goes through Jenny's pictures and spots Viper in the background of all of the pictures. He recognizes him from Dutch's bar, so he heads there and waits for him to come out. Artemis watches him on the CCTV monitors and sends the Russian mafia after him. They pursue Levon in their cars and open fire at him. He gets distracted and crashes his bike into a police vehicle. The cops knock him out and hand him to the Russians, revealing that the mafia owns the cops too. Levon luckily wakes up in the van and fights the Russians with his hands tied up. He gets his hands on their gun and starts shooting. The driver gets shot, due to which the van spirals out of control and tilts sideways. He shoots Simon's sons and escapes from the van. Before vanishing, he pushes the van into the river. When Simon is called in to identify his sons' corpses, he takes it personally and decides to come for Levon himself. On the other hand, Demi calls Artemis and Viper at the bar. He scolds them for having troubles with the clients because of Jenny and orders them to slay her. Subsequently, Simon sits at the high table with other mafia heads and tells them about Levon, who's slain his brother and sons. He takes it as an insult to their syndicate, so the men agree to join hands in order to get back at Levon. They send 2 hitmen after Levon and are confident that they will get the job done. Simon then pays Demi a visit at his club. Their talks reveal that Demi is Wolo's son, who's now taken over his father's empire. Simon overwhelms him by mentioning what Levon has done to his sons. Hence, he helps Simon track down Levon by showing him his ID card. They dig up his confidential past and find Mary's grandfather. They set his house on fire. Levon gets called to Mary's school as her grandfather hasn't shown up. Levon drives Mary back to her grandfather's house only to find it lit. He risks his life by going inside and rescuing the grandfather, who blames Levon for the fire. Mary tells him to be grateful to Levon, for he rescued him. Now knowing the Russians are hell-bent on taking revenge, he leaves Mary under Gunny's guardianship and borrows some of his guns to fight the mafia. Scenes shift to Jenny, who attacks Artemis and causes her car to crash. She escapes from there and comes across the female cop, not knowing she works for the Russians. The cop brings her back to Artemis and Viper, who plan to shoot her on Demi's command. They get a call from their injured client, who is now willing to pay more to get Jenny back. Next, Levon infiltrates Demi's turf and kills his security to get to him. He holds a gun to an innocent woman's head, but Levon shoots his hand and frees the woman. He then forces Demi to take him to Viper's nest, where Jenny is being held captive. Once Demi takes him to the abandoned house, Levon shoots him dead and moves on. Dutch and his thugs are securing the place. Meanwhile, the client arrives and prepares to torture Jenny to get back at her. Levon shoots everyone in his way and gets to the chamber when Jenny is about to be tortured. He shoots the putrid client on the spot, prompting a crossfire between him and Viper. Once Viper runs out of bullets, Levon engages in physical combat. Jenny also manages to use her legs to suffocate Artemis until her neck cracks and she dies. Levon finishes off Viper and frees Jenny. When they arrive outside, they are met with the high table's hitmen, who first shoot at the cops, not knowing they're on their side. Levon strategically shoots one of them and throws a grenade at the second one. Once the coast is clear, he gives Jenny a ride home. Simon witnesses them leave and calls the high table for help. They are convinced that he won't come after them since he found the girl he was looking for. Simon is adamant about avenging his family, but they desert him as they're afraid of messing with Levon. Now Levon unites Jenny with her parents, who praise and thank him. By the end of the film, Levon visits Gunny and unites with his daughter, who is safe. The film ends. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome recaps.